Now, I already gave an introductory lecture to the play Macbeth. Uh, a few things to be remembered is that this play was written between probably between 1603 and 1605. It was performed before James I in 1605. So it was written 1 or 2 years before that. And for performing in court, a shorter version was made. But we have lost that version and we have a longer version. But we never had a what we may call an authentic copy, or a copy authenticated by the author, so to say. The play was printed for the first time in 1623 in the first folio, which means about 18 years after it was written, and probably printed from foul papers and prompt books, and not from a very clean manuscript. And therefore the text that we have, it is kind of a botched up version, not a very clean version, and there are some scenes, some lines which are probably interpolations, that is written by somebody else and not Shakespeare, lines which were incorporated by the director of the performance or somebody else. So we have to remember that. Now, it is a Scottish play. The theme of the play is taken from the history of Scotland. However, the play is not within the historical plays of Shakespeare or the history plays of Shakespeare. So even though the theme is from history, but Shakespeare didn't write an historical play in Macbeth. And in the last class I discussed the probable sources of the play, and the most likely source was Holinshed's Chronicles of Britain, Scotland and Ireland. But Shakespeare never followed any source perfectly, so he always deviated whenever he wanted. And in this play, for example, we have the three witches which are not there in Holinshed. So the witches are an addition by Shakespeare, and it is the first scene of the play, the first scene and then scene 3. These are both scenes have the witches in them. And as you know that the first scene of any of Shakespeare's plays is very important, because it is the scene of exposition. Shakespeare would indicate a lot of things which are going to come, which are going to happen in the play in the very first scene, or the scene of exposition. So, therefore, the witches are very important because they open the scene. Now, today, what I will discuss will be around the witches, therefore, and I cannot read the play line by line. For obvious reason, the time is extremely short. Therefore, you must read the play and you must be familiar with each and every line that I am discussing, but I will not go line by line. So, I will assume that you have read the play or the scene that I am discussing. So, the witches, they have magical powers and they may be therefore considered as supernatural. And as you know that in this play and in Shakespeare's other plays, we often have a question about the supernatural in Shakespeare. And we have to remember that when Shakespeare was writing, the people of England were much more superstitious than today. And they believed in witches, they believed in black magic. All this belief and superstition find a representation in Shakespeare's play. But Shakespeare would never assert either a belief in superstition or a disbelief in superstition. So he would just present the contemporary situation that people believed in superstition in his time. And a lot of old women, they were often victimized by society, and either for grabbing their landed property, like widows, they were vulnerable and their relatives would want to grab their property, so people would label them as witches, and then it would often be easy to grab their property. So old women, they were marginalized, victimized. Sometimes, in old age, because of hormonal function, women develop facial hair, sometimes moustache, sometimes beard also. In the Renaissance, the people of England thought that bearded women, they were all witches because of the lack of medical knowledge and so on. So, witches may also represent not supernatural but real, poor, marginalized, vulnerable women. And this is the point of view taken up by modern Marxist critic Terry Eagleton, who has an essay, "The Witches Are the Real Heroines of the Play," where he interprets the witches as representatives of the poor women. So the first few lines, they are in rhyme. The witches speak in rhyme and kind of repetitive verse, which has an effect of incantation, incantatory verse, that is, a verse which has an effect of a charm or magic. When shall we three meet again, in thunder, lightning, or in rain? When the hurly-burly is done, when the battle is lost and won. Hurly-burly means battle or fighting. Lost and won, coming together. The witches speak in equivocation, or they speak in ambiguous language. So equivocation is an important theme in this play. As we will see that in this play, in the first act itself, there is the reference to the gunpowder plot and the trial of Father Garnet, who had asserted in his defense that his equivocation was acceptable because it was for a proper cause. So, equivocation, which is considered as sin in Christianity, a Jesuit father who was arrested because of the treason of gunpowder plot, he defended equivocation, and thus it became the talk of the town. And Shakespeare catches that very contemporary, debatable theme of equivocation in the play. And the witches, they provide a foil to Macbeth. That is, Macbeth often equivocates. He himself speaks in ambiguous terms, and he thinks like the witches, and sometimes he speaks like the witches, like the words fair and foul, which the witches use. They are used by Macbeth also, signifying that there is a spiritual empathy or a similarity between the witches and Macbeth. That is, all of them are forces of evil. So, first witch says, I come Grimalkin, second witch says, Paddock calls. So there is a belief, or there was a belief, that witches had their familiars. Familiar means something like a pet, but they had strange animals as familiars, like a cat or a toad, something foul. Fair is foul and foul is fair. Hover through the fog and fill the air. So in the construction of this sentence, fair is foul and foul is fair, we find chiasmus, this rhetorical figure where a syntax turns upon itself. Fair is foul, and that expression is turned against itself. A mirror image is given, foul is fair. So this kind of twisted syntax is chiasmus. I may write it if you need the spelling. I am writing in the chat box. Chiasmus. Fog and fill the air. That is alliteration, as you can see, and repetition of a word which is at the beginning of a sentence, repetition of that word at the end of the sentence, that is anadiplosis, another rhetorical figure. So fair is foul, foul is fair. So we have several rhetorical figures here. Uh, so what is the function of the witches? They prepare the context, or they prepare the atmosphere suitable for the arrival of Macbeth. That is, they are evil and they create an evil atmosphere, and Macbeth is the soul of evil in this play. The next scene is where Duncan, Malcolm, Donalbain, they all appear, and there is a bleeding captain. So in this scene we find there is a lot of praise bestowed on Macbeth, as Macbeth and Banquo, they fought against the Scottish rebel MacDonald and the Norwegian king who supported him, and they defeated them. So a lot of praise is bestowed on Macbeth, and Macbeth is represented as a great military hero. The scene 3 is again the witches, and in the scene 3 Macbeth and Banquo enter. So the first two scenes are there for suspense until the hero comes. The second scene creates a great inflated picture of Macbeth as a great military hero. And in this scene there is a bloody captain, that is a captain who fought in the war and has been wounded, severely wounded, and is bleeding. What is the purpose of including him here? He is the incarnation of honor. In the Middle Ages, warfare, chivalric wars were conducted on the basis of honor. So there were certain codes which were followed, and a person who fought valiantly would be considered an honorable man. The captain who is the epitome of this great value of honor, his counterpoint or opposite is the Thane of Cawdor, who would betray Duncan. So with the Thane of Cawdor we have the image of a traitor. The merciless MacDonald, worthy to be a rebel, for to that the multiplying villainies of nature do swarm upon him. From the western isles of Carns and Gallowglasses is supplied. Carns are foot soldiers, Gallowglasses are horsemen. And fortune on his damned quarrel smiling, showed like a rebel's core, but all is too weak for brave Macbeth. Now, this is a report by the captain of the war, but within this we have the image of fortune. So fortune was considered a goddess in the Renaissance, but a fickle goddess, because fortune would smile upon only some people, not upon everybody. And who she would smile upon, that has no logic, that is arbitrary, that is entirely upon her. And therefore she was considered a fickle goddess, and by extension of this fickle nature, she was often compared to a whore. Like a girl who has fickle nature would choose this man now, that man next, and so on. So fortune chooses her heroes in that manner. And of course, in this image of fortune, a goddess who is also called a prostitute. Here we have the misogyny, implied misogyny, no doubt. We have the same misogyny when the Italian thinker, Renaissance thinker Machiavelli, in The Prince, writes that fortune should be made to follow command by force. So one should take fortune by hair and force her to comply. So Macbeth here is described as disdaining fortune. So the counterpart of fortune, or the opposite of fortune, is enterprise. That is luck vis-a-vis one's own efforts, or enterprise. So Macbeth here is represented as an enterprising person. Like Valor's minion carved out his passage till he faced the slave, which never shook hands nor bade farewell to him, till he unseamed him from the nape to the chops. So when Macbeth faced MacDonald, he cut him into two pieces with his sword from the nape to the chops. Chop means the jaws, by one stroke. Unseamed, that here we have a tailoring imagery. Seaming means sewing. Unseaming means you undo the sewing. Okay. We have tailor imagery later also, when Macbeth says that this honor is like an overgrown dress upon me, which does not fit me anymore. So tailoring imagery is often there. In the Porter scene also we have the image of a tailor. Okay, so I told you the significance of the bloody captain, or the bleeding captain, as an image of honor, and the Norwegian king is here represented as supporting the rebel MacDonald. In history, actually, the Danes also supported this war, but Shakespeare omits the Danes. So Banquo and Macbeth, they have come out as great leaders, great captains. Then Ross and Angus appear, and Ross says that he is coming from Fife, a place in Scotland, where the Norwegian banners ploughed the sky and fan our people cold. Banners, that is the flags of the King of Norway and his soldiers, they fly high, and the Scottish people, the Scottish soldiers, they are cold, that is, they are afraid. Norway himself, that is the King of Norway. So the custom was to name the country to indicate the king. So Norway himself means the King of Norway. With terrible numbers, assisted by that most disloyal traitor, the Thane of Cawdor, began a dismal conflict, till that Bellona's bridegroom lapped in proof, confronted him with self-comparisons, point against point, rebellious arm against arm, curbing his lavish spirit, and to conclude, the victory fell on us. So here Macbeth is represented as Bellona's bridegroom, that is Mars, the god of war. And here the image of, or the character we may say, of the Thane of Cawdor is introduced as a traitor to the King of Scotland, Duncan. And Macbeth, lapped in proof, that is fully covered in armor, confronted him and fought him point by point and was victorious. Sweno, the Norway's king, now we have the name of the Norwegian king, craves composition, that is, he asks for forgiveness or for a truce, nor would deign him burial of his men till he disbursed at St. Comb's Inch $10,000 to our general use. So the military custom was to make the defeated party pay a lump sum amount, a huge amount, to the winning party, and unless they made the payment, the defeated party won't be allowed to bury their dead men. No more that Thane of Cawdor shall deceive our bosom interest, Duncan says. Go pronounce his present death, and with his former title greet Macbeth. So Duncan says that this Thane of Cawdor betrayed me, but he can't betray me anymore because he will be executed by my order, and the title, his title, will be bestowed upon Macbeth for his good contribution to the war or performance in the war. So Macbeth would become the Thane of Cawdor, which when Macbeth hears, he is very surprised because he doesn't know about Duncan's pronouncement. Again, the witches killing swine. A sailor's wife had chestnuts in her lap and mounced and mounced and mounced. Give me, quoth I. Around the witch, the Ramphedronian cries, her husband is to Aleppo gone, master of the tiger, but in a sieve I will thither sail, and like a rat without a tail, I will do, I will do, I will do. So the witch's words, which appear to be nonsensical, are not exactly nonsensical. The first witch is talking about a sailor's wife who didn't give her any food, but herself was eating. Rump fed, that is eating meat. She was well fed, she was eating meat. And her husband is gone to Aleppo, so her husband, who is a sailor. Aleppo was a transit point from Europe to Asia in Syria. Master of the tiger. The tiger is the name of a ship that Shakespeare mentions here. Professor Supriya Chaudhuri wrote a paper where she described that how the name tiger was very common in 16th century England as the name of a ship. There were many ships which had the name the tiger. So even though these words are put on the mouth of the witches, they carry some meaning. They reflect Shakespeare's contemporary reality. I will give thee a wind, thou art kind, and I another. I myself have all the other. So the witches say that the two witches tell the first witch that I will give you wind. Now, it was common belief that witches used to sell wind. Why was wind important? Because England heavily depended upon sailing and navigation. Their international commerce was dependent upon navigation, ships and sailing. Now, they had ships which made use of the wind for moving ahead. As there was no steam engine or any such thing at that time, only the wind power, which was caught by the big sails, the huge sails, the wind would take the ship forward. But on the sea, sometimes there is no wind. And if there is no wind, then the ship would stall in the middle of the ocean. Sometimes for days together, 10 days, 12 days and so on. It was called the calm. So on the sea, sailors feared both the storm and the calm. And we have representation of this in John Donne's poem. Donne has two poems, one called The Storm and another called The Calm. Now he uses these images to signify spiritual emotions, religious emotions and so on. But his contemporary readers would immediately understand that he was using very common image of the times, the calm and the storm. So when wind was so much important and people did not have control upon wind, a natural force, so this kind of superstition grew that one could buy wind from the witches. And we also see that the desire to have control over the natural forces and the ability to create a storm or a lull, a calm, all this is reflected in Shakespeare's play The Tempest, where Prospero learns magic so that he is able to create an artificial storm and so on. I myself have all the other, and the very ports they blow, all the quarters that they know, in the shipman's card. The shipman's card was a round card which indicated the different degrees of the globe, the different latitudes and longitudes of the globe, like a compass. I will drain him dry as hay, sleep shall neither night nor day hang upon his penthouse lid. A penthouse is a house which has a sloping roof. So the sailor would be deprived of sleep by the magic of the witch. So his eyelids would be sloping like the sloping roof of a penthouse. He shall live a man forbid. Very 7 nights, 9 times 9 shall he dwindle, peak and pine. So 9 was a magical number in numerology. So Renaissance authors often make use of numerology or numerological images. Milton also makes use of this. Though his bark cannot be lost, yet it shall be tempest tossed. So you see, we have the word tempest here, and the image of the tempest was also an alchemical image, which Shakespeare often shows awareness of alchemy and the images associated with it. Then we come to Macbeth and Banquo, and Macbeth says, "So foul and fair a day I have not seen," an expression which is a copy or which is an echo of the witch's words at the beginning of the play. So it symbolically sends a message to the audience, to the reader, that Macbeth's mental world and that of the witches is the same, the world of evil. Then as the witches appear, Macbeth does not ask them anything. He is spellbound. But Banquo asks them a question about their identity. Live you or are you aught that man may question? Are you alive? Alive beings? Are you anything which a man may question? Aught means anything. Because there was superstitious belief in witches and their magical powers, so both Banquo and Macbeth, they probably believe that the witches, they are magical, they have magical powers. You seem to understand me by each at once her choppy finger laying upon her skinny lips. You should be women, and yet your beards forbid me to interpret that you are so. So as I told you that bearded women or old women, haggard women, they were often thought to be witches. Speak if you can, what are you? So now Macbeth has finally gathered the courage to speak to them. So this scene is often referred to in order to understand the difference between the characters of Macbeth and Banquo. Banquo is not afraid of the witches, or the witches do not have the impact upon him as they have on Macbeth. Probably it is Macbeth's inner evil promptings that make him immediately come under the spell of the witches, because he wants to believe in them, he wants to believe in their magic, and he wants to benefit from their magical power. Banquo, on the contrary, does not have any such desire, even if he is not a skeptic like a modern man who does not believe in witches and so on. But he also does not want anything from them, or he does not want to have any commerce with them. Speak if you can, what are you? And then all the three witches hail Macbeth. The first one, hail to thee Thane of Glamis. The second, hail to thee Thane of Cawdor. And the third, Macbeth that shall be king hereafter. So the three prophecies of the witches, they astound Macbeth. Now Macbeth says that Glamis is dead, so I know that I am now the Thane of Glamis. I get his land and title. But he does not know about Duncan's verdict on the Thane of Cawdor, so he is very surprised. Banquo says, "Good sir, why do you start?" So hearing the prophecies of the witches and the addresses, Macbeth starts. Just a second. Uh, so this fact that Macbeth starts, that shows his inner guilt or his inner fear of coming under the influence of the witches. Good sir, why do you start and seem to fear things that do sound so fair? In the name of truth. Then Banquo asks the witches once again, are you fantastical, or that indeed which outwardly you show? Shakespeare often uses the word fantastical, but not in the modern sense of fantastical, but in the sense of fantasy, something imaginary, or sometimes something extraordinary, out of the way. Like in Measure for Measure, he describes the Duke as the fantastical Duke, who behaves in a very odd way. Okay. My noble partner, you greet with present grace and great prediction of noble having and of royal hope. That is the hope of being a king. That he seems rapt withal. So here we have the indication Macbeth is rapt. That is, he is totally taken, totally absorbed in the idea that the witches have probably outwardly put into his head. To me you speak not. If you can look into the seeds of time and say which grain will grow and which will not, speak then to me, who neither beg nor fear your favors nor your hate. So it is these lines, in fact, which very strongly indicate Banquo's character. Seeds of time, that is, seeds which evolve, which grow in course of time. So if you have the magical power of looking at the past and also at the future, and you know which grain will grow, which will not. So if you have the power of prophecy, then you tell me something about myself. You have said so many things about Macbeth, but nothing about me. But I do not want anything from you. I neither beg nor am I afraid of you. Then they hail him and they address him as lesser than Macbeth and greater. So equivocation. The simple meaning is clouded. It does not mean anything in simple terms. But if one thinks hard and tries to interpret, then one may say lesser than Macbeth because he is not king or he will not be king. Macbeth will be king. But greater than Macbeth because his progeny will be king. Stay, you imperfect speakers, tell me more. So Macbeth wants to know more, hear more from the witches. By Sinel's death I know I am Thane of Glamis, but how of Cawdor? The Thane of Cawdor lives a prosperous gentleman, and to be king stands not within the prospect of belief. So there is no reason to believe or even to assume or to wish or to think that I can ever be king. There is no reason to believe it. No more than to be Cawdor. Say from whence you owe this strange intelligence. Intelligence here means news, information. Or why upon this blasted head you stop our way with such prophetic greeting. Then the witches vanish. And Banquo says that these are bubbles of the earth. Macbeth says, have we eaten the insane root, that is mandrake, a root which was believed in the Renaissance that it turned people mad. You shall be king. Macbeth tells him, your children shall be kings. So you see, Macbeth is more attentive to the fact that Banquo's children would be kings rather than he himself will be king. Why? Because he is already envious of Banquo and afraid of Banquo. He does not want Banquo's children to be kings. So he is more concerned with that. And Banquo says, but you yourself will be king. And Thane of Cawdor too, went it not so? So after this, Ross and Angus will come and they will announce Duncan's pronouncement. The king has happily received, Macbeth, the news of thy success, and when he reads thy personal venture in the rebels' fight, his wonders and his praises do contend. Which should be thine or his? So whether he should be wondering more or he should be praising Macbeth more. Silenced with that, in viewing over the rest of the selfsome day, he finds thee in the stout Norwegian ranks, nothing afeard of what thyself didst make. Afraid. Strange images of death. You made strange images of death. That is, you killed so many people. They are images of death. As thick as hail came post with post. Post means messenger. At the time they used to come on horseback. And everyone did bear thy praises in his kingdom's great defense and poured them down before him. So everyone told the king how bravely Macbeth fought, and everyone praised Macbeth. We are sent to give thee from our royal master thanks, only to herald thee into his sight, not pay thee. That is, we cannot have the office of giving you any reward. That is the office of the king. The king can reward you. We can only bring you into his sight. So they are like messengers of the king. The Angus and Ross, they speak the language of the courtier, polite language. And for an earnest of a greater honor, he bade me from him call thee Thane of Cawdor. Earnest. Earnest means earnest money or immediate prize, immediate reward. What is the reward for Macbeth? Honor. That is title. The title of the Thane of Cawdor. So the king has given him the title of the Thane of Cawdor. And Banquo is surprised. What? Can the devil speak true? So the second prophecy of the witches has come true. And that raises the expectation that the third prophecy will also come true, that Macbeth will be king. Then Macbeth says, how is it possible? The Thane of Cawdor is alive. Why do you dress me in borrowed robes? Again, we may call it tailoring imagery, or we may call it dress imagery, clothing imagery, whatever. Borrowed robes, that is a title which belongs to another. It does not belong to me. Who as the Thane lives yet, but under heavy judgment bears that life which he deserves to lose. Whether he was combined with those of Norway, or did line the rebel with hidden help and vantage, or that with both he laboured in his country's wreck. He worked for the destruction of the country's wreck, I know not, but treason's capital, confessed and proved, have overthrown him. So his crime is capital treason. So treason is a capital crime. That is a most important crime or great crime. And he has confessed, and therefore it has overthrown him. That is, the king has given the order of executing him. The only punishment for a traitor in the 16th century was death. But it was a very cruel death. So, in the next page, Macbeth says, in an aside, two truths are told as happy prologues to the swelling act of the imperial theme. Can you tell me from where this image is taken? Now I will ask you to participate, speak a little. I have been talking. Can you tell me from which domain this image has been taken? And if you like, some of you can switch on your cameras if possible, one or two at least. So that we can have a conversation. Okay, people are leaving the meeting. Are you all afraid of speaking or what? Orko, you are here? Hello? Yes, Orko, can you speak?
So may I?
Yeah, of course.
So Britain had then just started uh, to expand its colonies. So could it be a reference from the political realm?
Just look at it. First of all, this play it is yet there is nothing British about it. It is a Scottish play right now. Uh, Here, the image is happy prologues to the swirling act of the imperial theme. No, it is not about colonizing or expansion of the empire. Can anybody guess which kind of image is this? It is an image from the theatre where the power of an emperor is being represented. Kings, emperors, they were common characters in the theatre. So, in before the king or the central characters, his actions are represented. Some lesser actions come first. So, these are prologues. And when the action rises, you remember the Aristotelian graph, rising action to the climax, that is the swelling act. The act is swelling, the act is rising, and it rises to the imperial theme, that is the action by the main characters, the king, queen, emperor, and so on and so forth. Is it clear? Ovendrila, is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So, G. Wilson Knight, a famous Shakespeare critic, he has a book called The Imperial Theme, taken from this line. Okay. Uh, this supernatural soliciting cannot be ill, cannot be good. If ill, why has it given me earnest of success, commencing in a truth? Supernatural soliciting, that is uh, the advice or the speeches by the witches. They cannot be ill, cannot be good. Now, how Macbeth explains it? So, he is also speaking like an equivocation. It cannot be good because then uh, it cannot be ill Because if it is ill, then why should I have success? Like I become the Thane of Cawdor. Why does the prophecy come out to be true? Then it is not evil. But uh, if good, then why do I feel such a great horror? Why do I yield to that suggestion whose horrid image doth unfix my hair? Which suggestion? The idea of murdering the king. The moment the witches told them that Macbeth is a future king, Macbeth has immediately thought of murdering him. But this act of murdering the king is never articulated anywhere in the play. Macbeth never names the act. So he always refers to it indirectly. That suggestion, okay, and make my seated heart knock at my ribs against the use of nature. Present fears are less than horrible imaginings. So Macbeth's imagination runs riot, and he is more afraid of what he imagines than the actual threats which are present at that time. Because Macbeth is a great hero, he is not afraid of anything which is present before him, but he is afraid of things which are not present, which are in his mind, in his imagination. My thought whose murder yet is but fantastical. Again, repetition of the word fantastical, which means imaginary. Shakes so my single state of man, that function is smothered in surmise, and nothing is but what is not. Single state of man refers to the wholeness of the man. Whole at the time also meant one who is healthy. We have a residue of this word now only in the phrase hale and hearty. So hale is a distortion of the word whole. Okay? Hale and hearty. So whole meant healthy. Single state, that is a healthy state. And that function is smothered in surmise. That is, I am so much absorbed in my imaginings that I can't act. And nothing is but what is not. So, that which is not there, I imagine that to be the only truth. So, my imagination becomes reality to me, and reality is nothing to me. So I think I will stop here, but before ending the class, if you have any questions, please ask.
So, could you please repeat the name of the Marxist critic that you mentioned?
Terry Eagleton, I am writing on the chat box.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other question?
Sir,
Ah.
can you please explain us the significance of the word weird? You explained us in the last class. Can you please once again?
Yes. Yeah, actually, I have given you uh, on the WhatsApp, I have given you the explanation of the three sisters of fate, or their source is also in Greek mythology, Roman mythology, and in Norse mythology. Uh, weird in it probably meant wayward, but the spelling was different. In Old English language, it was spelled weird, W-Y-R-D. And in Middle English language, it was spelled word, W-E-R-D. It probably meant wayward. But in modern times, it is spelled weird with two dots on the I, which I can't type here, which means that the I would be pronounced as E, weird, so it is pronounced as E. So basically, weird women would mean wayward women, that is, women who deviated from the normal course of life, and therefore it would be a fit description of witches who are not accepted in society, and who are out of the society, who live outside the society, and weird. Now, with weird, often the word sisters is used here in this play, particularly weird sisters. So this idea of sister is taken from mythology, like the three sisters of fate in Greek mythology, in Roman mythology, and in Norse mythology. All right. Is that
Yes.
clear? Okay. Any other question? All right, then, if you don't have any question, then I end the class here. Okay. Should I end it here?